What is going on, guys? It's Eric with Media Palace here. Thank you for joining me. Trying some new stuff out here, uh, making sure I got everything rolling. I see some people already hopping in chat. What is going on? Francesca E. Thank you for being here. Victor, what's going on? Thank you for hopping in this chat, man. I know we've spoken a few times. It's always good to see you guys pop up in here. Ida Bustamante, thank you for being here. I know you guys have probably grown sick and tired of me talking about some of the weird stuff here at the Brushy Creek. So I wanted to bring on someone who kind of corroborates uh, what's going on in my area, at least in the Central Texas, and I really like his approach on stuff because he's not again jumping to conclusions. He's more or less just following the data that he's been receiving, and I dig that he's not really jumping to conclusions and he's just collecting data for his research, and that is Rod Nichols from Bear County Bigfoot. Rod, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Awesome. Hey, I appreciate you being here, man. Tell
Yeah,
me,
thank you.
tell me about uh, Bear County Bigfoot.
Well, Bear County Bigfoot started back in 2018. Um, I started originally I had partnered with a gentleman named Rick Tullis, who was formerly from the GCBRO, which is I believe no longer around. He got a hold of me after I started posting some videos on Project Go and See. And if we
Okay.
want to go further back, basically how I got my start was from a gentleman out of Utah by the name of Nathan Rio, who
Right.
who showed he had a channel that showed a lot of what I call trace evidence, and what I mean by that is more specifically wood structures. And I binge watched all of his videos,
Sure.
and at the end there was a video that he put out that said, "Hey, look, this is what I use to find this evidence, or what I believe is evidence. And go and check it out. Use what I use, and you tell me if this is a hoax, if you think this is a ruse, or whatever." And so, being fascinated by the subject, going back to my childhood, I was just I was always a believer. I feel like I was, and so, the next day I was very excited, got up and used exactly what he had mapped out uh, on that video. And that same day, I found a wood structure on the day that I went to go out for a wood structure. And and it just started from there. And at that point in time, I had no idea what I was really doing, just documenting wood structures and trying to make sense of these huge pieces and things like that were put together with these things. And soon after that, a gentleman Rick got a hold of me, and he has a friend as well, a close friend of his that's a wildlife biologist. I didn't mention that, Eric, but I was going to tell you
Please.
that yeah, he's a wildlife biologist by the name of Dr. John Morley.
Okay.
And I was posting a lot of wood structures and all that stuff, and he got in touch with me and said, "Hey, man, like this is pretty compelling. Like, you're finding this in San Antonio?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm finding this in San Antonio."
Right.
He said, "Would you mind showing us, a couple of things? Like, we'd like to come out, and I'd like to bring my
Oh
wildlife
wow.
biologist friend with me." And I took them out to a couple of sites, and to be quite honest, they were blown away. Like,
Right.
you know, the gentleman that was wildlife biologist was like, "Wow, like this is substantial, and what you're finding is incredible. Like, I don't know if this is human built, or this is really crazy. Like, this is really crazy." So, from there, I was a part of the South Texas uh, Bigfoot Research Project
Okay.
Facebook page, and then after that, it progressed. Started Bear County Bigfoot. Rick was gracious enough to get me started with that group, and started that in the latter of 2018. And I've been boots on the ground ever since, mainly emphasizing uh, the trace evidence
Sure.
that is wood structures, and more recently a nice print that I was able to cast as well that really made things worthwhile, of all the few years that I have been doing this. finding a good print and casting it was amazing to me. But mainly, a lot of what I present to my group and the audience on YouTube is mainly wood structures,
Right.
and then utilizing these creeks and these green belts that make sense to me, that support big game. The habitat supports big game, which is going to be our white-tailed deer, and water source nearby. I would say about 3 to 4 miles close by, and so to me, the recipe made sense
Sure.
for alleged Sasquatch activity, right?
Oh yeah.
Again, saying, hey man, if and obviously we talked about this previous, but hey, if I'm a apex predator, how am I going to go about this, right?
Right.
Whitetail is prevalent in our city. There's a ton of it, and so if I'm gonna hunt, I need safe passage, I need concealment, I need to be strategic, and these creek green belts just really line up with such a style of hunting.
Oh yeah. And
At least
we
at
talk.
least in my
Yeah.
yeah
Excuse me. Hop in real
go
quick.
ahead.
I know that we talked behind the scenes here about you.
Yeah,
You're also part of the Balcones escarpment here, and so that's
right.
just it's visible from space. It's like a mini Grand Canyon, and it's just miles of greenbelt runoff and creek runoff there, and not
Yeah,
only that, but caves. You guys
yeah,
you've shown some pictures there on your Facebook group, and I have the link in the description. But there's some
yeah.
interesting caves and other places, nooks and crannies there. But
Yes,
yeah,
yeah. And so one more notably, this green belt, this creek green belt that I utilize, runs outside of the city, still in Bear County, and it runs into a very vast, thick area that hey, if I don't want to be seen and I want to be concealed, you'll never find me in this area. But
right.
this area also happens to be a Edwards Underground Aquifer Recharge Zone, which stretches
Oh yeah,
from here all the way to Austin and everywhere in between.
right.
Big underground cavern. And I thought to myself, I said, there's no way, there's no way that the city of Austin or San Antonio or anywhere else that this underground cavern reaches, there's no way they know every nook and
Oh yeah,
cranny of this at all. And so for me, it made sense. Hey, if I'm going to have safe passage, creek green belts, there it is. The habitat is right. Okay. So then where am I going to reside? Well, it makes sense that this creek greenbelt goes all the way into that Edwards
right.
Aquifer Recharge Zone, which is an underground cavern. And again, my theory, this is all speculation. I believe that's probably where they would reside, underground. It makes sense. All of these underground caverns that are huge, that are
Right.
stretched for miles, it makes sense where they would go to have concealment, where they would reside. It's cooler, things like that.
And we talked about you talked about it's all just kind of speculation, but I kind of like that about you. It's just speculation, and we talked about it a little bit behind the scenes. You're saying when you go out, you're not doing a lot of the techniques that a lot of other people have, and I really appreciate that. And if you want to just kind of dig into that a little bit more,
Yeah, I mean, and it's just this is just from me looking at and checking out other researchers, investigators, things like that, and what they do, right?
hmm
I went the opposite direction, right? I'm not going to tell you this is definitively
sure,
a Sasquatch wood structure, right?
right,
I can't say that. I don't know, right? But here's the other thing too. I'm not going to utilize wood knocks. I'm not going to try and do vocalizations. I'm not going to try and do any of those things because the fact of the matter is nobody knows what this means.
right,
Nobody knows what this means, right? So for me, I got to sit there and go, okay, well, yeah, I'm going to wood knock and I'm going to do my whoops or whatever. Okay, so well, let's say one of these things comes down and is pissed,
yeah,
and then what? What are you going to do then,
right,
right? I don't know what I was saying to this creature, or
sure,
to me, if I don't know what it means, why am I going to do it? I don't. So I tend not to go that route because nobody can definitively tell me what it means or what it's about or what kind of language, right? I mean,
right.
nobody knows. So therefore, I'm not going to touch it, and
Oh
that's
yeah,
kind of the way I've conducted uh, myself in investigation, research, whatever you want to call it.
Can you tell me a little bit about these tree structures? Because I have seen, I've been sent pictures of like little nests and stuff in my area, but kind of it doesn't seem to be the stature of what you're describing there in Bear County.
Right. Um, so there's a number of styles of tree structures that I have come across. And a lot of these tree structures, and here's what I'm going to be upfront and forthright about.
Sure.
These are in wilderness parks that are a part of the urban area
Okay.
of close by where I live. Now, here's the thing: these all run alongside of that creek. It's a very big, vast creek. It's got history behind
Oh
it.
yeah.
It's got a lot of history behind it. So, and then of course there's a water source close by in the form of this really huge pond. It's really, and in fact, there's an island, a couple islands on that pond that have been excavated in the 70s, where they had found tools from early man. I think dating back to like Cro-Magnon, you
Right.
know,
Oh
uh,
yeah.
all that stuff, right? So
Long
um,
time ago. Yeah.
yeah, long. So these wood structures run in. They are in these parks in the areas that people don't go. Okay, so I have to kind of dig in a little bit, and sometimes it's kind of it's it's kind of interesting because you'll see me walking out of this area and somebody will be walking their little poodle or
Oh
something,
yeah.
going like, "Hey, where'd this guy come from?" It's just me, just kind of trying to map out my area and see what's out there. But these are all in wilderness parks. And now this Creek Greenbelt has several parks connected to it. And so the one thing I'd like to make light of is that the white-tailed deer run in and out, utilizing that
Sure.
green belt, and they utilize these wilderness parks as well. And so that's where I found a lot of my wood structures. And some of these wood structures, they can be big enough to where a full-grown man could stand inside of them.
Wow.
It could be about maybe 4 feet tall, 3 feet tall, very intricate, made with purpose, woven pieces. And a lot of these pieces are good size. There are some that, and you could see this on my YouTube channel. Some of these pieces are whole trees that have been pulled out with the root system still on them, that have been fashioned in a way that it makes this kind of shelter.
Hmm.
And to me, looking at some of this stuff, I've had people tell me, oh well, it's Boy Scouts, or
Right.
it's people do it's homeless people, it's people. And my problem with that is this: these things don't keep out rain, they don't really keep out sunlight. I don't see evidence of a fire. I
Hmm.
don't
Yeah.
see cigarette butts. I
Yeah.
don't see water bottles, beer cans, none of that stuff. Okay. So you're telling me that there's a person out there that's pulling out trees out of the root system, that are trees that are, I'm talking about, 5 or 6 inches in diameter, about 10 to 12 feet tall, maybe even longer. And they're putting these things together for what reason,
Right.
right? So, now on the flip side of it, I can't definitively say that that's a Sasquatch structure. I have my inkling and my feeling that maybe, yeah, something's funky going on, but at the same time, I can't say that because I haven't seen these things
Sure.
create this stuff, right? But here's the thing: they are strategically placed in certain areas where I feel that there is some safe passage in and out. Some of these wood structures, surprisingly enough, are placed right next to the playground
Oh
in
wow.
these thick, which is interesting,
Yeah.
right? So when I say that, people go, "Well, it's kids, it's kids doing this. It's right next to the playground." I'm like, "Okay, let's break that down. Like, tell me, what kid is going to get off their phone, go into the woods, right, and
Right.
make this stuff for what?" Well, then the other thing was, well, it's Boy Scouts. Okay, I keep tabs on these sites fairly often. I can count. I can't. Hundreds of times I've been to these sites, and I've yet to run into a person putting a stick on this structure or
Right.
building.
That's a
I've
that's a
yet to
really
see
good
it.
point. You know, a lot of people, I don't think they kind of make that same assessment to where you frequent these areas and you never see these people creating these things. That's and you
Yeah,
figured someone would stumble across that, but
right.
we had
Where
a
are they?
yeah, exactly. We had
You
a couple
know?
of messages here. Brown Dwarf, our friend Brown Dwarf says, "Cool Bears on. He found one of the best structures I've seen." I don't know if
Oh,
you're
bad, yeah,
I don't know if you're
dude.
familiar with Brown Dwarf.
Brown dwarf.
Yeah.
No, man, that's my dude right
Oh,
there.
right on. Cool. Yeah, and he also says that yeah, they're also known to watch kids, especially. So he's
Yes, yeah,
kind of
and
saying the same thing. Yeah, go ahead.
it's interesting because Christopher
Uh huh.
Noel, we had talked about him. He had put me on his podcast, and he had told me like, hey, look, like there are eyewitness accounts of these creatures watching children play,
Right.
playgrounds, and just playing in general. So
Hmm.
and going back to the whole Christopher Noel, I'm sorry, Nathan Rio thing. Some of the wood structures that he had found on his videos, some of them were, they were in wooded wilderness parks that were close by to a, a playground. And, there you go. I
Right.
mean, now whether if it's a Sasquatch or not, I don't know. But, I find it really interesting that they're kind of using the same blueprint in Utah and
Mm-hmm.
in here. And I'm willing to bet in any other area where, the recipe is right for that type of activity.
Oh yeah, and we talked about it before, candidly, when we were talking about the how Central Texas. You're a little bit further south than me, but kind of the same area, hill
Yeah.
country. They were kind of overshadowed by the East Texas thing, and I wanted to ask you, do you think it's because there's more suburban areas here, or it's just because they're getting so much action out there in the East of
Yeah.
Texas?
No, East Texas is a hotbed of activity, right? We talked about,
Hmm.
out there like Lake Conroe,
Right.
Sam Houston National
Sure.
Forest, hotbed of activity, right? It's been noted, it's been documented. You've had people that are well liked and that have integrity, that have said, look, yeah, there's there's some crazy stuff going on over there. I've had you know rocks thrown at
Oh
me. I've
yeah.
had vocalizations. I mean, it just sounds crazy over there, right? Yeah, so you've got that, but I think people tend to dismiss the fact that these creatures are highly intelligent. Number one, even though they'll say they're intelligent, they don't understand that if we're talking about something that intelligent, that means that not only are they going to be strategic in how they hunt, but they're opportunistic, which means that they're not above dumpster diving. They're not
Sure.
above getting an easy meal. Let's face it. If it was us, we would want an easy meal. I don't want to work to get my
Right.
food. Like, you know what I mean? So
Oh yeah.
you have to put yourself kind of in those shoes in a way and go, okay, if I'm that apex predator and there's an easy meal I can go and grab out of a dumpster, I'm going to do it. And
Sure.
so, and these things, that happen are in suburban areas. And I would not put it past the encounter or the person that's talking about that specific encounter where it's by a wooded area or it's close
Oh
to
yeah.
a creek or it's close to a green belt where they've got safe passage in and out. Makes sense.
Makes a lot of sense, and we kind of, I've heard before that famous encounter there in, I believe it was by one of the Oklahoma casinos where they actually got, on film dumpster diving, and people have seen this.
Oh yeah.
I believe it was like a grease trap or something, but there are multiple people that have seen that video, and they said, hey, yeah,
Oh
it's
yeah.
real deal. And even in my area here in the Brushy Creek, one of the most detailed reports that I've ever read, here or not, was about how they saw something that was going through a compost pile. So
Yeah.
I think you're right about the opportunist thing. I think they'll grab whatever they can, pets, you know, uh,
Absolutely.
you know,
Yeah.
trash, whatever they can
Absolutely.
find. But
Absolutely. An easy meal is
easy
an easy
meal,
meal,
right?
and so and so I've had other people go, well, maybe what you've seen or not seen, but maybe what you've heard, because I've heard what I feel are maybe some vocalizations,
Okay,
or I'll tell you. Actually, this is something I didn't tell you prior. I
sure.
had found a doe carcass, a deer
I was going to ask
carcass.
you about animal mutilations here. Go ahead.
Yes, yes. So here's what's interesting. I found an area where there was a tree lean right next to it, right? The tree had been pulled out somewhere and moved to this area. It was leaned up against another tree. And I would say about 6 or 7 feet away from it, there was a doe carcass
Mhm.
that was just pulled apart. Her legs were pulled, all four legs were pulled off of her
Wow.
body, her torso. Her head was pulled off of her neck. The head was pulled apart from top to bottom jaw. There was pulled apart,
Wow.
uh, and then the torso itself, the spine, the back was broken in half, literally broken in half.
Yeah.
Now,
That's
what I did to kind of give myself a little bit of, I guess, not recognition, but I speculated that it was something that was a powerful creature that could have broken this doe's back. I took the wildlife biologist, Dr. John
hmm
Morley, with me to that area. He put the torso, the back, the spinal cord together, and it made this really huge indention in the middle, this really big bow.
hmm.
And he put it together. He said, Rod, he said, something with incredible force, with strength, broke this back of this doe right in half.
That's insane.
And I said, okay, so person, homeless person.
Right.
He's like, no, he's like, this has to be like the Incredible Hulk
Yeah.
as a homeless person to do this, you know.
That's hardcore. I don't know if you've seen any of my pictures or anything, but here off the Brushy Creek, I actually have a picture that was sent to me by an amazing researcher, and it was about of a coyote that was pulled inside out and tied into a knot.
Oh my God,
And I
that's
have the
crazy.
picture. I've shown it on here. And you mentioned like how the jaws were back. It's kind of the same
Yeah,
thing we're mentioning. Like the jaws here were
yeah.
reversed, and it was really creepy. Franceschi is saying don't show it, so I won't show it. But yeah, no, and that's the other thing. Like I was going to ask you about the animal mutilations and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Um,
I've encountered
right.
one. The other one, I will say, it's it's kind of a bummer. I was at another wilderness park that runs up against this creek. And in the beginning, when I walked up to one of the pavilions or one of the restrooms, there was a missing sign,
Oh
and it
wow.
was missing. It was this missing Chihuahua, right? And I just kind of briefly, kind of saw it, and I started doing my thing and started, looking at these game trails and following the game trails because that's kind of how I would find a lot of my
Right.
wood structures is utilizing game trails and going into places that people don't go. And I was in an area where I found a bunch of little small bones in a pile with a small skull
Uh-oh.
right on top of it that was placed on top of it. And I thought, maybe I found that Chihuahua.
Yeah. Could
That
be.
was, yeah. And so that was one thing that I had found that I was like, whoa,
Yeah.
what pulled this little dog apart and put it in a little pile of
Oh yeah.
bones? And and hey, was it a Sasquatch? I don't know, but man, that was just crazy. It was weird.
Yeah, when I used to live where in the house I grew up kind of backed up to my area that I would check out now, the Brushy Creek,
Mhm.
and you'd hear that all the time. Animals, your cats, dogs going missing, and
Yeah,
people were kind of saying it was coyotes, but we only saw a coyote a handful of times there, so
right,
who really
right. And
knows?
going back to the wildlife, you know as well as I do, we don't have bears here.
No.
We
Yeah.
don't have bears. And if it's a cat, we seldomly see. It's rare that we find
hmm
have a mountain lion sighting around here. Rare,
Right.
very rare. So you know, the whole thing of like, well, maybe it's bears, or maybe it's a big cat. No, you got to rule those out because we don't have we. I mean, if
Right.
it's a cat, it's super super rare, and there's no bears here. So then what is it?
Oh yeah.
Again, you have to kind of connect the dots in a way.
Yeah, no, and I know, when I started talking about stuff, I had a lot of people from like New York and California were like, "Oh, that's a bear," and I'm like, "Well, we don't have bears where
Yeah,
I am, so
yeah,
that's
yeah.
you're gonna have to rule that
Bears,
out."
bears in Austin, Texas. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, that's not alligators maybe, but bears, no.
yeah.
It's
maybe,
happened.
yeah, maybe,
They've seen them
maybe.
before in the creeks here. It's pretty. It's like a weird phenomena. Yeah, they've seen alligators here for a while. Uh,
Yeah. Oh wow, I didn't know that. That's
yeah,
crazy.
it's pretty weird. But no, yeah. So you don't have to go specifically about telling us where you're kind of hunting now or researching now, but you want to
Yeah.
kind of just give us like a typography. What does it look like there, or if it's near, how far, how near to certain areas and stuff.
Yes. Yeah. So what I'll tell you is this. And I try to be. Every I think every enthusiast researcher, whatever you want to call them, has their areas where they, and I don't own this land
Right.
obviously, but at the same time I've put in so much work and so much documentation that I take ownership in a way of these areas, and a lot of this stuff is going to be in north central San Antonio. A lot of it's going to be in north west San
Okay.
Antonio.
That's a good area
That's
there. I've heard a lot of encounters up there.
Oh
Kind of
yeah,
like by
yeah,
Elotes over there, kind of something like that.
yeah, yes,
Yeah.
yes. Well, and more notably, you've got Government
I
Canyon
was going to
Park.
ask you about that, but we go ahead. Yeah, I'll ask you about that a little bit later because I wanted to bring that
Sure,
up. But please,
sure.
yeah.
So a lot of my research and boots on the ground, if you will, uh, pertains to those areas. Now, those areas have a rhyme and a reason. They have a passage in and passage out,
Okay.
and I think, like I mentioned before, I can't go up to a piece of wooded property and go, yeah, that Sasquatch is running through here.
Right.
There has to be, it has to make sense. It has to make sense. It really does. So for me, I have to really put myself in the shoes of a hunter.
Oh yeah.
Where am I going to go? How am I going to do this? How am I going to hunt? Right. And so, you know, the creeks and green belts make so much sense
Right.
because I've got safe passage, I've got concealment, I've got the food source that goes, and whitetail, as well as I do, they're creatures of habit,
Sure. Yeah.
So, hey, man, I can basically just calculate when these things are coming in and out, and there you go. So most of my trace evidence that I have found have been in north central and northwest San Antonio. I have trickled into the Medina
Okay.
area where I believe there was, according to the BFRO, there was maybe some vocalizations. Something scared this person that was, I think, fishing.
Gotcha.
Um, but then I've gone through that a little bit of that area. I haven't gone through all of it. Obviously, I don't think I'll ever go through all of it, but I've gone through some of it, and it does make sense. That area does make sense as well. The other part of it is, I think I've gone through and found some really good evidence too, as well at, oh gosh, Pearsall Park, which is, surprisingly enough, it butts up against the old Kelly Air Force Base.
Okay.
And there's cattle land.
Right.
That's part of, I want to say that's part of the close to the Medina area as well, Medina Wildlife Area.
Gotcha.
There's running water. There's some whitetail out there as well. So I've ventured out into those areas as well. I'm always looking to try and find new areas where I believe there might be some quote activity or alleged activity.
No, I love the way you're approaching and the fact that you're able to bring. Well, at that time, you were actually able to bring out a biologist out there with you, man. That's
Yeah,
the way to go.
yeah,
You're not playing around when you're doing something like
yeah,
that. That's really awesome to hear. And just to touch on some of the stuff you were saying about like the deer carcass in the forest that took to break the back. Uh, like I said, I do a lot of digging through newspaper reports and stuff, and there was one report that actually took place near that Kelly Air Force Base, where
yeah.
unfortunately there was two deaths, very close timing. In one of the deaths, a woman was impaled through her torso and
Oh
by a
wow,
branch. Yeah, and the
wow.
detective said that it took superhuman strength to do that. And that case remains unsolved. And that was the same time people were seeing things around that Kelly Air Force Base area. So it's something I know that the Air Force is no longer there, right? It's like just a,
Right.
yeah.
No, it's yeah, it's all contract work now. It's
Okay.
aviation, but
Right.
it's all contractors, different aviation companies that have come in and revitalized the
Gotcha.
area, which is good. So, and to add on to that,
Hmm.
I had forgotten there was over here close to the one of the parks that I'm pretty active in. Um, there was a report of, and I remember this well. It was a biker, a cyclist that had, I guess they say, fallen into the creek
Okay.
during his, I guess, his bike ride, and passed away, unfortunately. And they said the frame of the bike was wrapped around him.
Wow.
So again, I mean, and again, I wasn't there,
Sure.
obviously,
Yeah.
but the wording
Yeah.
of
Exactly.
of the bike frame
Yeah.
being, and they said, oh, this guy died of a heart attack, and
Wow.
he fell and into the creek, and the frame of the bike just wrapped around him. I'm like, I don't know about that.
Yeah. If you fell from a couple
um,
of stories, maybe, but yeah,
yeah,
I don't
yeah,
know. But
no,
well, let me
I
bring up
don't
the
think
the
so.
government state canyon there because it's kind of like the sister park to what we have over here, and that's the Balcones Canyonlands. And
Mm-hmm.
I've heard
Mm-hmm.
of numerous, accounts from there, and I've even been sent pictures and stuff. Hopefully, I'll be able to share those soon. But yeah, and that is kind of like the sister park because I believe I think it was created a little bit before the Balcones, but it was kind of in the same, intention. They were trying to preserve wildlife in that area, and
Sure,
I've
sure.
seen one of the most awesome videos coming out of the government state park. It was two giant rattlesnakes fighting. It was the craziest thing I've ever
Mm-hmm.
seen, and that just kind of shows you that it's still wild out there. Like there's still so much
Yes,
wilderness and wild out in those areas, and they're not that
yes.
far from these suburban areas. So you're talking
No,
about green belts and these
yeah,
places. Maybe they just come in for a little while and then go back to these protected canyon areas that are
yeah,
now federal
yeah,
preserves and federal parks. But I'd love to hear
yeah.
what you, if you have any information on the government canyon
So
there.
yeah, I have been to Government Canyon a few times. Unfortunately, I have not seen
Mm-hmm.
any trace evidence,
Okay.
wood structures, and maybe I'm going to the wrong spot.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think about mapping out that area of where I've been and where I haven't been.
Right.
So I'm still working around that area to try and figure out where I need to go. One of the trails that I've gone through is it's tough, man. Like
Oh
it's
yeah.
there's a sign that at one point where it says, "Hey, look, if you don't have enough water at this point, you need to turn back around." Like
Wow.
it's no joke,
Right.
So I have not seen or heard anything yet
Mm-hmm.
around that area. Now, what I what I do know is that it's a fairly new wilderness park, and somebody, and I can't remember exactly who this lady was. She's a researcher as well. She had asked me about that, and she had heard something along the lines of like, "Hey, like they had found a couple of bodies that were giant uh, bodies that were really big in that area, and they don't know exactly what they
Right.
are, or but I mean, and whether or not if that's true, I don't know. That was just brought to light. Somebody that messaged me and let me know, like, hey, look,
Yeah.
I've heard of this happening, and I'm like, all right,
Well,
well,
I've heard that same, that I've heard that same story of a woman biologist
oh,
who was in that area, and I believe she was hired by the Parks Department, and who knows if it's true or not? I have no idea, but it's
yeah,
really interesting story, and that she found apparently she was they found some bodies there. I believe it was like three or four bodies there in one of these cave areas, which there's tons of them there, and they did like some sort of autopsy and stuff. But it's all we really have no
yeah,
data for it, but it's been
yeah,
floating
yeah,
around
yeah,
for a little while, and that's really what got attention to the government state park there. But I've also been sent other accounts of people having experiences there, but nothing really concrete or like you're saying the
yeah,
physical data or anything like that. But it's not to say
yeah.
it's not there.
No, 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 and and you're right. You can't definitively say that these creatures aren't at least passing through
Right.
this area. I don't know. and that's a and but here's the thing, it make that habitat makes sense
Yeah.
too. It really
Yeah.
does. And it's butted up against the Medina Lake,
Oh yeah.
which again, there you go, there's your water
Yeah.
source. So and that's kind of the way I think. I have to see the geography and where it is in relation to a water source, and where it is as far as the habitat, and does it make sense as far as safe passage in and out. And that's the way I look at things.
No, that's just kind of like a common sense, common sense way to look at it. That's kind of been lost to people that have been out there. I love the
Oh,
way you're
it really
looking at it.
has.
Yeah, no, I love it. You're talking about things that you're not sure of. You're not messing around with these tree structures, or not. I'm sorry, the tree knocks and stuff like that. You're
Right.
kind of you have a set of things that you're going out there looking for, and it seems like you're kind of hitting the nail on the head. Again, the biologist thing was freaking amazing. That's
Oh,
so cool.
it it blew that guy's mind.
Yeah,
And it's
doesn't
interesting,
surprise me.
Eric, because I brought him to a wood structure that was just insane. It was insane. And he stood there inside this wood structure,
Wow.
and he was like looking at me. He was like, Rod, do you think people made this? Like, he was
Yeah.
questioning whether or not if this was something that was
Right.
man-made,
Yeah.
or what cryptid made. I
Right.
don't know. And he was really like, wow, like, okay.
And that's the
He
thing.
did.
Like it's I think kind of like with the UFO stuff, I think people will eventually catch up, and there will be some type of disclosure on some level or another. But right
Sure.
now, it just seems like that the people that are involved, the science and biologists or whatever, it's hard for them to put their name on something just because the way things
Oh,
are.
of course,
And
and
mhm,
rightfully so,
yeah,
rightfully so. You know, and somebody had asked me a while back, what would it take to definitively prove these things exist? And here's the other thing. If you're gonna tell me these things don't exist, you have to dismiss the thousands
oh yeah.
of
Well, if one of
encounters.
them's real, it's real.
Right,
You know.
exactly. But here's the other part of it. All of these encounters, the correlation, the behavior,
Yeah,
the hair color,
yeah,
all of these things, they all kind of line up, right?
yeah.
So you can't tell me these things aren't real. Number one.
Right.
Number two, I believe we have to present a body.
I agree. I agree.
They have
Yeah.
someone has to kill one. Honestly,
Yeah.
and I know some people are gonna like that because they think they're the forest friends and things like
Hmm.
that. And I get it. It's cool. Hey, if that's you, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna knock you on that. I'm not gonna make funny on that. But here's the other part of it. It really takes physical
I
evidence,
agree.
and more importantly, I don't think, and I don't think we'll ever see this. And I could be wrong. I would say it would have to take a body in a third party lab,
Sure.
or
Yeah.
not the government,
Right.
not the government. It can't be the government involved, because then it's just going to get covered up, and it's going to be fallen by the wayside. There it is.
No, I agree 100%. Real quick, I think Brown Dwarf says, "Is it the billion strict? Is it the billion stick structure?" I don't know if that's like an inside thing between you
Yes,
guys, or
yes,
yeah.
yeah, it is. It
Okay.
is the I call it the beast,
The B.
or
Okay.
what is that? I've referred it to as being in the belly of the beast, which is one of the most intricate and big. And I would say, and I'm not trying to be prideful by any means, but I think this is probably one of the biggest wood structures I think
Sure.
ever found.
I gotta
Honestly,
see
or
that thing,
I
man. As soon as we finish here, I'm gonna go to your page and see if it's on there.
check it out.
Yeah.
Check it out.
And again, if anybody wants to see some of this stuff that Rod's talking about, please check out Bear County Bigfoot on Facebook, and I think you said Instagram as well.
Yeah, at
Okay.
Instagram,
Sweet.
Bear County Bigfoot, uh, Facebook, Bear County Bigfoot as
Right
well.
on.
It's a group where I would have to approve,
Sure.
obviously,
Yeah.
but no big deal. The more the
Right.
merrier. YouTube, Bear County Bigfoot as well.
And Brown Dwarf is saying, yeah, that's the structure he's talking about there.
Yeah, yeah,
And he
that
says it is the biggest he's ever seen or whatever.
it's
Yeah,
it's
I gotta
it's
see
it's
that.
massive, dude. It's massive, and that area too. There's and the other part of it is that I've reached out to Ken Gerhard
Okay, yeah,
as well, who lives here in San Antonio, and try to, you know, uh, get his take on things, and he was gracious enough to answer my email. I know he's a busy guy, so I was really excited to really hear his take. And he was saying, hey, I think there's maybe some smaller groups, or a few that run through here. But obviously they're not big in numbers in this area, which I believe that
Hmm.
too as well. But nevertheless, there's some that are running through here. I feel like they are, so there you go.
There's a lot of, I'm not going to say evidence. There's a lot of data kind of supporting that there is.
Oh yeah.
It might be something. What it is, we don't know, but there's something doing this. Uh,
We don't know.
yeah.
And here's the other. It was just another thing that I didn't mention. I totally forgot. So I have a friend that lived on a piece of property with their parents. She had her two boys that were younger, elementary school age, young boys, and this piece of property had two older houses that were on it on pier and beam.
Okay. Yeah.
That gives you an indication.
Old school.
Uh, and that property is close to a road called Bulverde Road,
Yes. Yes. I know
and it's
that road.
close
Okay.
to 1604. And where the property is, it butts up against a tributary of the Salado Creek,
Okay.
in that area. So uh, she had mentioned, and this was something that I had talked to her about. She had mentioned this before without even knowing about the Bigfoot, research and investigation that I've done. And she said, I was having a problem with my boys, screaming and crying and running from their room into my room, wanting to sleep in my bed because they say, and this is their words, a big, tall black man is staring in their window at them
Well.
at night. And at that time, she didn't have curtains or anything like that. It's an older home,
Yeah.
and so this has happened 3 or 4 times, and she thought, "What?" And she didn't want to believe them. She's like, "Oh, you guys, they're just kids. They're,
Yeah.
making up stuff. They're having nightmares and things like that." But it happened about 3 or 4 times, and so she
That's
put up
creepy.
curtains, and that seemed to stop. And then the other part of it was that she had cooking in the kitchen, and felt like something just came up and slapped the side of the house
Yeah. That's weird.
hard, like hard, and so that was kind of weird. And then the other part of it was, a strange smell
Mm.
that was like what she's described as like dead animal and bo and wet dog mixed
Right.
together. So so and at that time when she disclosed all this stuff, I said, well, here's what I know, and this lines up with classic Sasquatch activity or encounters, and when I said that, it was kind of like, no, you're crazy.
Yeah.
That's weird. That's funny. You're
Well.
Yeah. And I'm like, no, no. Let me show you some things here. Let me
Right.
show you this encounter, this encounter, this encounter. It lines all up. And then at that point, she was like, whoa, oh, maybe this is something. So,
Yeah.
I've had people that I know inadvertently have maybe some type of encounter, or
Oh yeah.
her boys. So to me, and you have to look at it this way: think about all the encounters that you've heard that said, "Hey, it looked like an African American guy in a hoodie," or it
Right.
looked like what I mean. Like, and obviously, I'm not saying these things to be racist or whatever, but that those are the encounters. Those are the
Right.
encounters that people have
That's right. Yeah.
disclosed. So wow, like, and it's off of a major creek
Right.
that I've
Well, that
it was
area, that area is beautiful, like Bull Verde and stuff. And a lot of people don't think of it, but it is like rolling hills. People think it's
yes,
flat land. No, there's a lot of
no,
hills to the
yeah,
point where people have even like nicknamed some of these hills like mountains. Like I think in Marble Falls, there's Moon
yeah,
Mountain, and it's really a hill, but there's rolling hills, and specifically in those areas right there. And a
yeah.
few more comments here. I think Nanana says her sister lives in Bull Verde, and she also asked if you know anything about the Bigfoot Road of San Antonio. I don't think I've ever heard of that.
I've heard that before, but
Yeah. Okay.
I don't recall exactly where that's at.
Right. Okay. And the other thing I wanted to ask you was that In your documentation and stuff, you kind of proved it already with the deer thing you were mentioning. But do they seem to be more aggressive? Because that's a story that I'm getting. Like people have these aggressive encounters of being chased out of areas or
Sure.
thrown stuff at, and I've experienced that where they've thrown things. It's pretty.
Sure.
Yeah.
I myself, to be completely transparent, I have not had anything like that happen to me yet.
Sure.
Um, Now, what I do know is this: the uh, the Sam Houston Area National Forest,
Right.
those guys, the consensus on that is that they are aggressive, from throwing rocks and pieces of wood, things like that. I know that for a fact. And this is several encounters and several eyewitnesses, obviously through other podcasts that I've heard. I have yet to have anything like that happen, but I will say this:
Hmm.
if you were a 7-8 foot, 700-800 pound creature covered in hair living in South Texas, I think you'd be pissed
Yeah.
off too,
Right.
because our summers are brutal.
Oh yeah.
So,
Well,
you know,
the other thing I wanted to talk about was, kind of this suburban thing about how, we touched base on it a little bit before, how they would, they're opportunists and things like that. And I wanted to talk about, I don't know if you've heard of the Natividad Wild Man, the Wild Man of the Navidad. Have you heard of that before? It,
I've heard that.
yeah,
I've
well, I mean, it's
Yeah.
crazy because it was literally there's two sides of the story. Okay, you could either believe that it was some type of hairy man by biped, or you could believe that it was a runaway slave, which unfortunately I think they might have crossed paths at one point, and the dogs picked up one or the other
Hmm.
smell. But either way, there was something out there in a town, out just right outside of a township, that was taking food and other things for like 5 years, and no one had ever seen this person. It was all just rumor, So,
Yeah.
I think people really have a hard time understanding how dense the forest is out here, and how the
Hmm.
creek, the green belts, and the creeks, and places to hide, and it just it's hard for them to understand once since they're not in the area, they haven't really kind of got a
Right.
sense of it. But it's kind of goes to show you things can hide out here in the Texas wilderness for a long, long time without ever being detected.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think also to add on to that is that as people, as humans, I think we're arrogant
Mm.
enough to think that we know every inch
Right.
of our parks, our
Oh
wilderness
yeah.
parks. And the truth of the matter is we don't. And not even, and I would venture to say, not even the city really knows what's in these parks when they make these little trails and things like that.
Right.
They don't know every piece of this. They don't know what resides there.
Exactly.
They don't know what runs through. They can't definitively answer that. And so you have to sit there and go, well, again, if I'm a biped creature, 7-8 feet, and I'm real good at hunting, this poses as a really good area with the whitetail and the creek and the in and out of that area.
Right.
That makes perfect sense. Perfect
Oh
sense to
yeah.
me.
No, I agree. So, do you have anything right now that you're working on, or anything specific, like area that you're trying to check out right now?
Right now, I'm trying to make my way up in that Edwards Underground
Oh
Aquifer
yeah.
area, the recharge. I've gotten up in there already, and I put out a video on my YouTube channel,
Okay.
kind of describing, and it wasn't anything with wood structures or
Hmm.
anything like that, but I had put together a video, kind of describing the recharge zone,
Right.
the flowing water that's coming out of the ground there, the caves that
Yeah.
are around that area, all of that stuff. I put out a video that's showing you that stuff, and the reason why I did that was to try and tie everything in,
Right.
because I've been preaching this for a,
Yeah.
for a good while now. Like, hey, in and out of the creek, Edwards Underground Aquifer,
Oh yeah.
cavern and caves, whitetail deer going in, So all this stuff, I'm trying to tie it in, and try to bring to light my hypothesis, or my theory rather, on what I believe what's going on. So I'm kind of trying to make my way in that area.
Oh no, man, I love it. I think you're doing an amazing job. You're doing a lot better than some of the other things that I've heard some other people doing. You're not jumping to conclusions. You're just gathering data, which is kind of the same thing I'm doing here in my areas.
Yeah.
I'm just gathering data. I'm not jumping to conclusions. I'm saying this is what I have, and I'm just putting it out there.
Yeah.
Make your own decisions of what it could be. So
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
right way to look at it.
And
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, and I try to be as I try to debunk things
Oh, that's a great
as
way to look
much as
at
I
it.
can. I
Yeah,
really do because yeah, there are people that do certain things, weird things out there. I don't know,
right.
so I try to be as I try to sift through all of it and make sense of it,
Oh yeah,
and when I can't, I have to chalk it up to something else that might be, going on. So, that's what that's kind of what I do, and I can only do these things if I'm got boots on the ground.
right.
I can't sit there as an armchair,
Yeah,
quote, armchair researcher and go, yeah, that's what they do.
yeah.
And that's, I remember I presented a wood structure that was really interesting to me. It was like a big U shape. It was like a wall of sticks that were
That's
woven
weird.
together in a big U shape. And, the leaves inside this thing were flattened out. It looked like something with weight was in there. And this person said, oh, that's where the females give birth to the babies. They use
Hmm.
that and they give birth to the and my question back to that person was, you've seen this with your own two
Sure.
eyes?
Yeah.
Like I mean, I'm
Oh
not
man,
asking anything.
I love it. Yeah.
I'm not asking anything far fetched. Like
No.
if you're telling me that that's what they do,
Yeah.
then you've seen it, right? No, I
Oh my
haven't.
god. Right.
Okay.
No, I,
you know,
I, I, I I freaking love what you just said. Where you're not really calling them out on it, but you're
no,
asking common sense questions.
it's
Like,
an honest
yeah,
question.
there's no harm in that. I heard the other day about a guy who was like, oh yeah, I can get them to go on certain trails and stuff, and I'm like, come on, man, like
That I don't know.
that
I
just
don't.
hurts the
I
subject. It
you
doesn't.
know
I don't know.
But you know what, Eric? At
Yeah.
the same time, though, I can't dismiss encounters and things like
True.
that
It's true.
that sound like supernatural
Right.
or
Right.
paranormal. I can't dismiss that stuff.
Have you
I
have
have
you
to.
heard those in your area? Yeah,
Yeah.
you have. Okay.
Well, oh no, not in my area. No,
Well, I
no.
mean,
I
yeah,
can't. But I mean, I've heard of these things.
sure.
Of somebody having an encounter with these creatures, and then soon after they see these orbs.
Right.
You know, all that
And that
stuff.
could be just a coincidence, or who knows?
It could be. It could be.
Misidentification.
It could be.
Right.
But I can't. I have to hear everybody out. I really
Oh
do.
yeah.
And I really try to really hear everybody out in their encounter and things like that. And I shy away from trying to insulting or making fun of anybody. I don't do that stuff.
Right.
Like hey, if this is what you tell me is the truth, okay, cool, man. Like let me hear it. Like all right. So I try to be, I try to take things with that approach, and
Hmm.
there's way too much. It's so volatile in this community, or
Oh
I want to
yeah.
say
Yeah.
loosely community.
Subject. Yeah.
Because you have to have thick skin here
Right.
in this community.
It's
You
true.
have to be able to defend yourself intelligently, things like that. And it's fine. It's okay because we're talking about a creature that really and honestly nobody knows nothing about.
Right.
Let's be honest. We really don't. So
It's true.
we think we know, but we don't.
Right.
And so that's another thing. I think one of the coolest things that's happened to me so far is I was able to befriend Michael Freeman, which is uh, um, uh, uh, I think Bob Freeman's son.
Okay. Yeah.
Uh, um, you know, and he's shown me a couple of things with the castings that his dad has put together, which were examined by Dr. Jeff Meldrum.
Sure.
He sent me a casting that has dermal ridging on it, and I was able to take that casting and put it up against mine as far as the shape and things like that.
Right.
And that's been a big help to me because you've got to have a reference to put this stuff up against in a
Oh
way,
yeah.
and to kind of make it go, yeah, this
Well,
is this looks like a legit print.
no, I love the way you're kind of you're kind of, you're speaking with these professionals, the biologists. You've interacted with Friedman's son, who had it kind of, clarified by Dr. Meldrum, which I think that's
Yeah.
kind of the way to go. You're kind of taking them because you're taking their word because they're kind of the, I don't want to say experts, but they have a little bit more of a sense of human anatomy, or anatomy in general,
Yes.
a little bit more than the layman, I guess. So I really like the way you're doing that. You're not just sending it to some dude and who knows where, Florida or whatever,
Yeah.
and he's just like, oh yeah, that's this, yeah. No, I love it.
Yeah.
And no, that's
Yeah.
that's all
Yeah.
great, man. I really love it. Do you have anything you'd like to say that we might have? I think we had.
Oh,
I probably missed 100 things that we were supposed to talk about, but go ahead.
no, we could probably do a part two
We
if you want
probably we
to.
probably will end up doing that if you're cool with
uh,
that. Yeah.
yeah, no, I'm down, dude. So one thing I will say is this, I I'd like to tell people like, hey, you could be right. Whenever they tell me, something that's happened to them and or what they believe, hey, you could be right because,
Hmm.
again, the truth of the matter is this: we don't know definitively what these creatures do. But all we have to go off of are encounters
Right.
of the behavior, the size, the color, the facial features, eyes, nose, things like that. I'm going to continue what I do, and the reason for that is because I'm passionate about the subject. Number one, and number two, I really want to take my documentation and hopefully somebody will utilize it and go, hey, this makes sense. We've got these tree structures, we got this, we got that. Now it all comes
Yeah.
together. And I'm hoping that somebody will utilize it and go, this is it. Like, great,
Right.
here we go. Like, I'm not gonna say I'm not the be all end all of any of this, and I'm never gonna say that I'm an expert in the
Sure.
subject. I'm not. I'm far from it. And I think anybody else that would say they're an expert, they're full of crap. Honestly, I don't believe there's any
I
such thing
love
as
it.
an expert,
Yeah.
un, unless I've got one of these things in my garage
Right.
where I can ask questions and
That's an
talk
expert.
to it.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So I'm never going to claim those things, but one thing that I am going to do is I'm going to continue with my documentation. I'm going to continue on my so I guess what you want to say, research, things
Sure.
like that. I'm always open to hear people out in my area. In fact, I would like to say that if anybody in my area, Bear County surrounding areas, has had an encounter or a sighting, please reach out to me. I'd love to go out and check it out and see and hear your story, hear you out, and see what we can make sense of.
Right.
So, but yeah, no, that's pretty much it.
I love it, man. You're out there. You're kind of using common sense. It's not so common, unfortunately, in the sub we're working for. But
Yeah,
I
yeah,
love that you're just harvesting hard data. Those structures and stuff. That's something you can put your hands on. Your eyes on. It's not a story with no name or anything like that.
it's
It's
tangible. It's tangible.
tangible.
And
Yeah. It's
here, here's the other
go
thing,
ahead.
Eric, real quick, is that if you want to discredit wood structures, I get it. I understand. But here's the thing: you've got to listen to a lot of encounters,
Hmm.
and a lot of these encounters, some of these hunters, some of these hikers have said, yeah, I came across this really weird looking wood structure or this thing, and then I had my encounter. you know
Right.
there's
Oh yeah.
so many encounters that have noted that.
Right.
So so I can't, so
Right.
you can't discredit wood structures
Well,
in my
Well, I'm going to
opinion.
tell you
Okay.
right now, Rod, wood structures are real. And, I've done the research and I've seen that in my area, the Tonkawood tribe, the Native American tribe, used tree structures to indicate where water was, to where, certain
There you
hunting
go.
areas. That's a fact. We know
There
tree
you
structures
go.
are real. The other thing that we need to question is whether or not whatever's out here is using that. So
Yeah,
the structures themselves
absolutely.
are proven to be real, but we don't
Yeah,
know what's creating them. That's the thing, and
exactly.
what they mean.
Well, and here's the other thing.
Hmm.
I had somebody tell me like, well, that's Native Americans. I'm like, then
Right.
tell me a group of Native Americans are
Yeah.
running around
Exactly. Yeah.
and building these things. There's
It's
just no way.
it's far fetched, but it's something is out
Yeah.
there building them. I don't know if it's in the
Yes.
same motif as the ancient, Native Americans were
Yeah.
before, but there is still remnants here in my area of trees that were used for, signals and signs, and
Mm-hmm.
that was a form of communication then. Who knows if
Mm-hmm.
it carried on? We don't know, but we do know those structures were real at one time for use
Absolutely.
of communication. So we know that that's a fact. We just got to
Yep.
find out what's doing it.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
thing.
Absolutely.
But
And whoever's doing it is incredibly strong.
right, yeah, no, it's from what it seems like. I'm gonna go check out that structure you're
Yeah.
mentioning here.
Check it out.
But
Check it out.
but Rod, hey, I really appreciate it. I'm gonna have you back on soon.
Yeah, man.
Soon, and I have a
Absolutely.
lot of family
Absolutely.
down there in San Antonio, so we might be able to link up here
Dude,
soon.
come
So
on down here, man.
yeah,
Come on down.
yeah, and again, I think I've touched kind of behind stage about it about this kind of project that I'm working on. Maybe a mini documentary about one of these encounters that took place there in Bexar County, and I would love to
Yeah.
have you featured in there. I think that'd be great.
Oh man.
Yeah,
Listen, that would be an honor.
right on.
Yeah, that would be great.
Cool,
Absolutely.
cool. Well, hey, I will. I'm gonna hang up with you now, but I'll call you back here
Sure.
shortly.
Okay,
All
thanks.
right. Hey,
Yeah, no
Rod.
worries.
Thank you, Rod from Bear Bigfoot. You guys can find the link for the group in the description. So I'm gonna go ahead and call
Yeah.
you here in a minute.
All right,
All
man.
right.
Thanks, dude.
Thanks, dude.
Take care.
Appreciate it later.
Bye-bye.
Cool, guys. So that was Rod from uh, Bear County Bigfoot, and it might look like Bexar County to some of you guys, but yeah, it's pronounced Bear County, just right there in that San Antonio area, and it's kind of similar to what we're dealing with here in my area, the Brushy Creek area. Very similar, part of the Balcones Escarpment, and the way he's checking out things, the way he's harvesting this data. I love saying harvesting data is, I think it's the right way to do it. He's not jumping to conclusions. He's not out there doing random, things that haven't really been proven. He's just there observing, documenting things, and it seems like he's got a good head on his shoulders as far as going out there with credible people like biologists and other doctors and stuff like that. So I really appreciate Rod hopping on and kind of sharing some of the stuff that I've been talking about as well. It's always good to have a second opinion on that, but I appreciate you guys for hopping in. This Friday, more likely, I will be doing one of the colorized monster movies that I've been working on. So I recently finished another one. So if you guys are interested and you guys want to watch that with me, I'll probably make that a regular thing. I've actually found another piece of software that helps me colorize them a little bit faster. This one's a good one. It's an awesome monster movie. Probably one of the funniest monster movies I've seen. I've colorized here so far. It's awesome that the monsters in it are hilarious. Everything looks really cool. So hopefully you guys will like that. And I might have a guest on for that one as well. So that should be Friday, maybe around the same time. But if you guys want to make sure you don't miss that, please like and subscribe. Be on here for a couple more minutes if you guys have any questions, maybe 1 or 2 minutes. I don't want to miss anybody here, but we had some Pine Island research pop in. What's going on, Jeff? Appreciate you being here. Adi Bustamante, Franceschi, Brown Dwarf. Thank you guys so much. Brown Dwarfs have stick Indians. So there is a lot of documentation showing, I have books about it, talking about how Native Americans would use these tree structures and these tree, architecture to signify where water is, where certain things are. So that is real. What we're seeing now, it seems to be real. We just don't know what's out there doing that. So who knows? That might come with time, but I see Francesca says very good interview content. Thanks, Rod and Eric. Hey, thank you, Francesca, for being here. Victor Jackson. Victor, what's going on? I might have to have Victor come on here soon when I'm going to be doing Brushy Creek updates because he contacted me with some interesting information. I really won't talk about it right now, but if you guys have seen my community tab, it's in there. And I appreciate Victor for reaching out, and it was something that I had no idea. And again, I appreciate that. And Victor Jackson says, I think there is a definite connection between Native Americans and Sasquatch. And that's kind of a theme we've been hearing for years, whether or not that's true is one thing, but it seems like it's been documented so many times. It almost has to be. They have their own interpretations of Bigfoot and their own encounters that it's not on any internet base. So who knows? It's just verbal stories they've passed down. Francesca says, Victor says, we'll be here. Francesca says, that would be great to hear from Victor. So we might have to have Victor on here for the Brushy Creek updates we're going to be doing here. But yeah, guys, I will be back Friday with the colorized movie. Just chill, watching movies, and I might have a guest with me in studio or out of studio. I'm not really sure, but I'm working on a guest. So yeah, we'll be having fun watching this colorized movies and this new colorized movie again. It's freaking hilarious. I think you guys will like it. And real quick, I know it's been about a week since the unfortunate passing of Carrie Arnold, and that really hit the community really hard. And I had the opportunity, the well, had the yeah, I had the opportunity, the pleasure of being on Bigfoot Odyssey with Carrie Arnold, and he was a real Southern gentleman and a dedicated researcher, and he was I talked to him multiple occasions, and he was always just a really kind individual who always wanted to help out researchers and anyone in the field. So his dedication is going to be missed, and condolences to his friends and family. But I will be back Sunday, guys. I'm sorry, I will be back Friday. So if you guys want to hang out, shoot the breeze, chat it up, please join that stream. So I'll be posting about it here pretty soon. And if you guys don't want to miss it, you can subscribe, you can hit that bell notification, and you won't miss it. So I appreciate everyone for being here. And yeah, just make sure you guys have a good rest of your week. Thanks, guys.